Good evening, Jets fans, and welcome to episode 13 of the Jet Fuel podcast here on G Show Productions. I'm your host, Graham, the G Show Forsyth. We're coming in with a fresh cut on this Monday night for episode 13. Hope you guys liked it. Pretty satisfied with it. Yeah, pretty lazy with my hair, to be honest with you. I get a cut, and then I wait about 6 months to get a cut again. I let it grow out pretty long, as you guys saw before. How long it was with it bugging me with it being in my face and whatnot, but it's out of the way. It's a fresh cut. I'm excited to be here on this Monday night. This edition of the the Jet Fuel podcast is brought to you by Make Canada Fasteners and Tools, your one-stop shop for all your industrial needs. Be sure to visit their store locations in Brandon and Winnipeg today if you want to buy from them, as well as you can check out their website at makecanadafasteners.shop to check out what type of products that they offer for you to purchase. Terrico is another sponsor. Thank you to them for sponsoring another edition of the Jet Fuel podcast, serving Manitoba producers for over 80 years. Visit their website at gshow.ca for more information on their products and why they're so trusted by Manitoba producers and goaltenders, your goalie's personal video review service. Visit their website today at GordyTumilsonGoalies.ca to check out what they're all about. A one-on-one video Zoom service for the goaltending coach, Gordy Tumilson, and his clients he brings in. It's pretty cool the way they do goaltending coaching over there. But the Winnipeg Jets, they've been one of the best teams in the National Hockey League. At one point, the best team in the National Hockey League, up until losing to the Philadelphia Flyers on Saturday. But they're second in the whole NHL. And for this Winnipeg Jets team, what a run it was. An 8-game win streak, 14-game point streak, and now second place in overall NHL standings. This photo courtesy of Yard Barker. But a historic run for this Winnipeg Jets team in this span, and they are going through injuries right now, most notably Mark Scheifele just going out the other day against the Chicago Blackhawks with a lower body injury. He's currently day-to-day, but great news, Jets fans. Kyle Connor is practicing again. He was in full contact practice today, as reported by reporters in the Winnipeg Jets media. And I had a chance to not talk about that with this guest coming up, but talk about Mark Scheifele and the impact that his absence will potentially have on this Winnipeg Jets team, as well as what this Winnipeg Jets team has been able to do, talking about trade deadline and all that great stuff with Nick Lynam of Top Line Media, coming up on episode 13 of the official Winnipeg Jets podcast here for G Show Productions, Jet Fuel, episode 13 on gshow.ca. G Show Productions on YouTube, brought to you by Make Canada Fasteners and Tools, Terrico, and goaltenders Nick Lynam, coming up next. We got someone who went national recently, Nick Lynam, joining this edition of the Jet Fuel podcast. Nick, you were on CBC, talking to the host about the Jets heading into that matchup against the Flyers that the Jets lost. We'll talk about that in a moment, but expand on what we were talking about off camera, that opportunity, how it came about, and how surreal that truly was.
No, yeah, that was pretty cool to kind of jump on a national CBC program and talk some Jets, spread the gospel of the, for my money, the best team in the West right now. So, yeah, it was just I was going to the game against Chicago, which set the win record. And I was actually approached just via Twitter DM by the producer, and I was going to do it that night at the arena before the game. Then there were some breaking news segments that took that slot, so then I didn't think it was going to happen. Saturday or Friday, they kind of reached out like, hey, the Jets won. You still want to jump on and talk about this? And yeah, the rest is history.
Yeah, and the Jets in that game against Chicago, like you said, Nick, setting the franchise record for 8 straight wins. The point streak and the win streak ended on Saturday against the Philadelphia Flyers, losing 2-0. The Jets had their opportunities, 2 goals against, couldn't break the shutout that the Flyers put on them. Your thoughts on this losing streak coming to an end?
I think it was inevitable. And I even thought, I think I said in that CBC piece that it felt like Saturday might be it. Um, 9 games in 15 days, man, and they won the first 8 of them. Like that's quite the stretch. I don't like to blame injuries because Philly was dealing with some pretty big ones on their end of things with
Yeah.
Coots and Drysdale as last minute scratches. But this team, I think you really saw how important Mark Scheifele is to creating a lot of the offense for the Winnipeg Jets. And losing him and just not being able to pop one, it was tough because in arena too, there was a good vibe going, and it just felt like if they would have got one, you might have seen the kind of reaction you saw against Chicago when they got one and helped push them over a little bit. Just unfortunately, it didn't come to be.
Yeah, and Philly, their goaltender Samuel Urson with a fantastic performance, making a huge save, especially early on Robin Velarde on one of the Jets' three power play chances. But Jets going 0 for 3 on the power play, 1 for 2 on the
Mm-hmm.
penalty kill. That penalty kill, that power play goal that Philadelphia had, Nick, it's just another example of this Jets having a passive penalty kill. If there's one thing that is of concern, I'd say it is this team's special teams. And in a
Mm-hmm.
game like this, I feel like it kind of costed them. The Jets had their opportunities, no doubt about it. Got you know, stopped by a hot goaltender in this game, and defensively just slipping up a bit and costing them against a stingy, good defensive team in Philadelphia, who's top 10 defensively this season. I think with Mark Scheifele out, it definitely did affect the Jets big time. You lose your first line centerman, who's been on a tear this season for his standards from in terms of playing an all around game. It's definitely hard to try to bounce back from that in a short amount of time. So, yeah, I don't think long term this should be a worry for Jets fans, but definitely disappointing to see it come to an end, but not surprising, like you said. The amount of hockey they were playing, and at some point a streak like this does have to come to an end.
Yeah, for sure. And it's carried them to being a top two team in the league. So we might as well enjoy it than dwell on the one game and worry about the. I saw on social media people were worried about the floor caving in. Not yet, man. That was the first loss in 9 games. First 9 points in 14, 15 games. Like things are going well in Winnipeg. Let's not get antsy about one loss here.
And taking a look at Philadelphia, it's not like this Flyers team is scrubs. They're top three in the Metropolitan Division, the 23-14-6 record. And I'd said it last
Mhm.
episode. I said, I think the Jets have an opportunity in front of them to build off of the first place lead they had at the time, with two easier matchups to start off this next 4 game homestand at the time against Columbus and Chicago. You play teams like Philadelphia and New York to end off when you've been playing so much with, Sorokin can steal games. I'm not
Oh
sure if
yeah.
he's going to be playing tomorrow. They got one of the best goaltending tandems in the league. And Philadelphia, you already mentioned, one of the best defensive teams in the league. The way this Jets team has been playing, though, I don't understand why people are acting like the floor is caving in. They're 12-2-2 in their last 16 games. They're playing the best defensive brand of hockey they ever have been in a
In the
stretch
entire NHL,
throughout the
they're
season.
the, they're the best team in the entire NHL defensively.
They're second in the league right now. They're almost the President's Trophy favorites, like the front runners at this point in the season. It's just outstanding to see this from the Winnipeg Jets fan base, where I've been a realist throughout the years, Nick, and have
Mm-hmm.
called it like I see it. And I've seen bad Jets teams, and this Jets team is not one of those teams. This is a team with, I think, a chance to make a lot of noise come playoff time if they have the right guys in the lineup. Connor should be coming back soon, which is a huge plus for this team too.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. This is the best defensive team in the entire NHL. This is a team that's been married to their system. Even on bad nights, you see them get to that system and take over games. Even against Philly, man. As I wouldn't say as poor, but you could tell that team was kind of at the end of a stretch here where they looked a little gassed. They didn't look like they had a game. Even the back 35 minutes, though, the big narrative in Winnipeg with lack of pushback, down 2-0. That team really made a big push. They just couldn't get one over the line. Like this team is one of the better versions. I'm one of the few people that's really having trouble putting it over the 17-18 group. I know that's kind of taken a bit of a narrative of itself lately, and I just can't go there for myself. But this is clearly for me the second best Winnipeg Jets team we've seen.
Oh, a hundred
It's the third time.
percent, 100%. And said on a blog last week, I think on paper the decor in 2017-18 was better talent-wise, but this group this season is playing better defensively as a whole, collectively. And I think that's been a lot of where the success has come from this year, even though this decor has been playing really good, and guys like Pionk, Brendan Dillon, and as much as he's struggled at times, Nate Schmidt has even shown some flashes of some good play this season. And I think moving forward here without Shifley for the next little bit with his lower body injury, as Connor gets back into the lineup soon here, who knows, we might be seeing Billy Hanola soon. He's going to be playing with the Moose to be starting off. But I think with the injuries at this point in the season, especially with the one seeing Shifley being out, we're really going to see how effective this rig bonus system can be for this team, because we're seeing it in Boston this year, right, Nick? They don't have a true really 1C, but they're still one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference and are going to be in the running to win the President's Trophy again. It looks like it at this point in the season. So I think this is really going to prove how good of a system Rick Bonus has moving forward, to see how this team can continue to generate offense off of the strong structure that they've been playing with.
Yeah, I think the system's intact. The biggest question I have with what Rick Bonus is doing is kind of the usage right now, actually. Didn't love how he kind of ran the bench on Saturday. I think that's a game where he's got to look himself in the mirror a little bit more. Without Mark Scheifele, you saw Adam Lowry get bumped into that top line, and I think that's more than fine based on what the Jets have going. But then it just kind of left one of their best offensive players in Niederreiter on an island with Rasmus Kupari making his way back in his first game. Mason Appleton, who's been an offensive creator now for 25 games, if we're being honest about it. And Dominic Toninato took a shot at that center spot too, and it just didn't work. I didn't love seeing Rick not give Nino a chance with, let's say, Nemestikov and Perfetti to kind of impact that game. And I didn't love in that game when you're chasing a game. Mason Appleton was the Winnipeg Jets forward leader in even strength ice time. And he hasn't scored a goal in 25 games. Those are the things I'm worried about when it comes to Rick Bonus. I think the system and the culture's down pat. I think he leans on some of the wrong guys at the wrong times here.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that, Nick. And you look at the production that Follow has had since January 2nd against Tampa Bay when he scored a goal. He's gone goalless and pointless since then. And with how good Nino Niederreiter has been playing, yeah, with the way you're shaking up the lineup, people have been so adamant on, and I've agreed with this for the most part, not to break up that third line because of how good they've been this season. People have also considered them the second line. The Niederreiter, Lowry, and Appleton trio, obviously with Shifley out now, you got to mix things up and juggle the lineup. And yeah, Adam Lowry and Nino Niederreiter have been driving that third line for the Jets, and Nino Niederreiter is a top six level player. So I follow. He's more of like that middle six guy who you can play him in the top six, but if you have the opportunity to slide him down a bit into the lineup further down, and I think the results could have been better. I do agree with the usage. I don't know what it is. I guess he just likes how hard he works, but I don't think he's been working as hard as he has in the past in Mason Appleton this season. And like you said, scoreless in the last 25 games played. I don't understand why he's getting as much ice time as he is. I do agree that those things are concerning. We've also seen it last year with Nikolai Ehlers not getting the most ice time and Perfetti not getting the most ice time that he should in games this year. So that's definitely going to be a big question, I think, come playoff time, especially in the big moments for the Jets in terms of Rick Bonus. But like you said, I do agree with, I think the culture and system is definitely down pat here in Winnipeg this year.
100%. I'm fascinated. Actually, the big question now is with Kyle Connor coming back, what does that mean for Nick Ehlers' minutes? This is the number one player in the NHL in 5-on-5 points since the promotion to the top line.
Yeah, I think as much as this team loves Kyle Connor as is like on paper and his skill set. He's the best goal scorer this team has. But you're so right. Nikolai Ehlers, in my opinion, is the best player on this Jets team at this point since December. He's been impactful on both ends of the ice, and there's no way you can really take him off because that top line has even jumped up in terms of their production even more so compared to when Kyle Connor has been on that line. So I think you put Kyle Connor with Perfetti when they're back. I think I said this last week. They've had great chemistry in the past. They've shown it. You got your smartest player on the team paired with your best goal scorer. And, Kyle Connor has also shown he can be a better playmaker throughout his career. And Cole Perfetti's scoring more this year. I think it's a no-brainer. And to split up Ehlers and those guys on the top line who's ever playing, I think that'd be a foolish move when that would maybe happen, eventually happen. Who knows?
Yeah, I would agree.
So all-star selections, Nick, Rick Bonus and Connor Hellebuck are going to be going well deserved for both of these guys. I feel like this season, with the Jets being the top team in the West and in their division, Connor Hellebuck being, I think, one of the favorites to win the Vezina Trophy. Your thoughts on this, and do you think there were any snubs?
Yeah, shout out Rick Bonus. This is his first time behind the bench at an All-Star game for a guy that's been doing this over 4 decades. Like that's it's gonna be a pretty good cool thing. Hopefully him and his wife can enjoy a little bit of a trip out there. Connor Hellebuck, no brainer for me, just continues adding to what I'm gonna be pounding the drum in 10 years as a Hall of Fame level career in Winnipeg. Obviously him being one of the first choices, I think made a lot of sense to me. And there was one big stub for me in Winnipeg just because of how the voting works now, and that's Josh Morrissey for me. For me, Josh Morrissey has been outside of Connor Hellebuck, the Winnipeg Jets MVP this year. This is a guy that I talked about it on Top Line this week, but we as a fan base were very vocal a year ago about the Josh Morrissey movement because he was putting up a point a game. The version of Josh Morrissey, and the one thing that went under talked about last year, and I tried to bring attention to it, and some others did as well. He was giving up defensively to put up those points a game, which is more than okay for me. Like if you're a defenseman having a 76-point season, I don't care about the defensive side of the puck. But this year, he's found that perfect mix where he's been an absolute shutdown guy. He's still going to put up 60-plus points. He's, for me, at worst, the fifth best defenseman in the NHL this year. He might be the third best. I think he's an absolute snub. And that is my problem with the model the NHL All-Star Game has gone to is maybe it's because I'm a big hockey nerd. I look at stuff historically, and I just can't help but worry about in generations moving forward when you're looking back on this timeline people's legacies are going to kind of get hurt by the fan vote and stuff and where we've kind of gone with the All-Star game.
Right. So how does the voting work exactly? Because there are 12 spots open. Is it limited to certain divisions or is it just any player? Like,
I believe this year was completely open because they're not doing a divisional format. It's all draft. So I think this year was wide open.
my opinion is this. I think Josh Morrissey is as good this year comparable to last year. I think last year, like you said, we saw a version of Josh Morrissey where he gave up more defense to put up more offense. He's still putting up great totals this season offensively and has been even more reliable in the defensive zone. It's been a real treat to watch. I do understand why he didn't get in. I think you could argue it as a snub. You take a look at him when comparing to one of the other defensemen that made it in, and Morgan Riley, they're putting up about the same amount of points this year in terms of that production. And in terms of an all-star game, like the points, the flash, that's what kind of matters, right? And I think they're two very similar players, but with it being in Toronto and with the bigger market, it makes sense. Winnipeg being one of the top teams in the league this season, it's still a small market, right? And I would have loved to see Josh Morrissey go. I think that he could have been a deserving all-star, but at the end of the day, not too upset about it because the players going, like we're seeing guys like Cale Makar, Brock Besser, who's having a great season, and a lot of deserving players going. So yeah, I understand it. The diehard Jets fans and guys like yourself, Nick, who love Josh Morrissey. I love Josh Morrissey. He's been phenomenal this year. The Jets'
Mm,
best all-round defenseman, but do understand why he didn't get the call. Hoping for next year though, for sure.
No, absolutely.
Going into trade deadline, this Winnipeg Jets team, they're as good as they've been. We all know that you can get even better at the deadline. We're gonna talk about, I guess, in general to start things off for trade deadline talks. We touched on it last week on the show. Me and Liam Davies, the guest last week. We're gonna expand into it more. Lindholm. You had tweeted something as well as the returns that are rumored out for these guys that have been reported. Break
Mhm.
us in on those and what your thoughts are on it, because it does look like quite a bit for a potential rental at the very most for Winnipeg and Lindholm if he were to come here.
Yeah, so the fourth period there had reported that the Jets are going to be going shopping, which makes sense. The one thing, like I think I fall into that realist or pessimist side that you've fallen into over the last few years, and like the one thing I do think a lot of people miss when talking about Chevy, myself included, is when this team has been in the top three of their division, he has gone and spent at least that first round pick, if not more. It happened in 17-18. It happened 18-19. It's when they've kind of been a wild card team on the fringe that he's kind of pulled those assets back, which looking at it, I think that's probably a fair way to go about it. So I fully expect the Winnipeg Jets are going to take a big swing this year. I think Chevy was kind of hedging himself a little bit in his press conference, talking about we haven't accomplished anything yet. I'm trying to keep the pedal down because I think that's a GM that knows he's sitting on a really good team here. And the closer they get to the deadline, still playing at this level, the more options are going to open up for the Winnipeg Jets, whether that be popping off of no moves and no trade clauses because they're still one of the top teams in the NHL. So I think this next stretch is super important for establishing that resume league wide to open up there. As for Lindholm, the reported cost at this time was a first round pick, a top prospect, and another mid prospect or pick. For a rental, there's just no way. I don't see Calgary getting that. It's that time of year when they're trying to get a team to bite early. We hear these asks all the time. I think at the end of the day, Lindholm is going to cost probably a first and a good prospect, but not one of your like top end guys. Teams just stopped going away. We haven't really seen that since like the Martin era Philip Forsberg deal. Like we see the odd occasion where top prospects still move, but it typically isn't for rentals. Then give me 1 second. I just got to end a call here.
Yeah, no worries.
Um, Then there was the Sean Monahan rumor, who the Jets have also been linked to. So clearly the Jets are being linked to centers, which I think makes sense. I think Tusi is the biggest hole. Sean Monahan, the Habs are asking a first round pick or a second round pick and a prospect. Both those prices for Sean Monahan would make me sick to my absolute stomach. I am a Sean Monahan non-believer. I've not been a Sean Monahan guy since his Calgary days. That's a guy to me that I think is getting. If you look at the point totals, I get why you'd get excited, but he's putting up those point totals because he's seeing more ice time than he would elsewhere playing on a bad Habs team. That's a pump and dump I don't want to be a part of. I do think 2C is the whole, especially I think the Mark Scheifele losing him against Philly just showed how much and how important that spot's going to be if something happened to Mark Scheifele in the playoffs. If this team wants to become more dangerous down the lineup, an offensive 2C, a couple names I like that were outside of those two, Casey Middlestad in Buffalo. That team, they're gonna have to look at some stuff there. I do wonder about Claude Giroux in Ottawa. There's already some murmurs he'd like to win. That team's not going to win during his contract. Can you convince him to move to Winnipeg for a year and a half and take a couple cracks at it? Those are some of the names I kind of like, but I think we're still a little early. The Eastern Conference is starting to get figured out a little bit here. If the Islanders fall out of it, Brock Nelson's a name I think the Jets will be all over. Minnesota guy, pretty decent contract for the next year and a half. Though he's a little up there in age, but I could see him being a fit. But I do expect a big swing at 2C. What about you?
Yeah, I think 2C has to be the play. And as good as Nemesnikov has been as 2C this
Yeah.
season, I don't think on paper and just theoretically heading into a 7 game playoff series, I'd be comfortable with him as my 2C behind Mark Scheifele. And like you said, like if Mark Scheifele goes down with an injury, we've already seen it in the past. And it was one of the big reasons why the Jets were sunk against Calgary in that play-in. They lose Lyne too. That was pretty much lights out for that team. But I think looking at 2C, like I think I'd be more willing to spend that on a guy like Lindholm if he were going to sign in Winnipeg long term. But for a rental, I do agree that's way too much. I think Sean Monahan, he's gone into a perfect situation in Montreal where, like he said, he's playing on a bad team with more ice time and playing under a offensive minded, creative head coach in Marty St. Louis, who's gotten the best out of offensive minded players. Looking at TSN's trade bait board right now, the only other center on the list is Adam Henrique, who's making almost $6 million, 5.8 mil, who hasn't had the greatest season in Anaheim team who's been up and down this season and isn't going to be in playoff spot, I don't feel like. So it's going to be interesting. I'd love to bring in a guy like Brock Nelson and Claude Giroux if I'm the Winnipeg Jets, especially a guy like Claude Giroux, where you get everything in that package, the offensive ability as well as the ability to shut guys down defensively, high hockey IQ, and a guy that can not only play at center, but you can also play him on wing as well, as we've seen during his time in Ottawa. But second line center, you need to get deeper at that position. It's so important. And ideally, a guy that is solid in the face-off circle as well. That's another area that's minor, I think, right now for the Jets, but getting more stability in the face-off circle could be huge come trade deadline. Obviously, not the big deciding factor, but a nice bonus on top. That would be for sure.
Yeah, I'll say this. I have even less interest actually in Elias Lindholm with an extension than as a rental. For me, that's the only I only would want him as a rental. That's not a guy I want to sign long term at all. I think he actually kills his value with a long term deal, and I think whoever signs that deal is going to regret it. Similar to how LA is probably feeling about PLD right now. The Adam Henrique thing's interesting because I actually think that's a player that really you could drop into this lineup and he would fit really well with what the Jets are trying to do. But for me, he's like a plan C or D. You kind of missed out on something bigger, but you want to get some additional C help here. I do think Henrique in the bonus system would be an interesting fit. And I don't think the cost would be anything dramatic that you'd be worried about.
No, yeah, I mean, yeah, I could see that for sure. Adam Henrique definitely isn't like I think stirring up a lot of noise this year too. So
No.
it isn't going to be, that much. I think, yeah, the reason I said that about Lindholm is just because of the cost you're going to give up. You'd like to have someone there long term to go coming the other way for the big things you're going to be giving up. But yeah, if the Jets could go out and land an Adam Henrique, if it did come to that, this is the guy who put up 22 goals last season. A
Mhm.
guy that is shown that he can put up good analytical numbers. So yeah, I think honestly, you could be bang on with that right there, Nick. Dropping him into a system that's as strong as the Winnipeg Jets and playing him
Mhm.
with the type of players on their roster that they got at wing, much better at that position down the whole lineup than they have been in years. I think, yeah, it could be a nice sneaky addition.
Yeah, that's one guy that I've like really circled as a guy that I think Chevy was very deliberate about talking about fits, and then he went and targeted last year Nino Niederreiter, Vlad Nemestikov. Both went under the radar. Though I think Nino got a lot of hype. I think Nemestikov went kind of under the radar between the two. And I look at Adam Henrique as a guy that fits the mold of where this team's gone the last year. So he's one guy I'm really curious about actually.
Yeah, and the players that the Jets have brought in the past, you look at it like when they have gone and swung big. Paul Stastny, a 200-foot complete high IQ player. They bring in lower tier players in terms of the bigger names like Nemesnikov last season, who it was under the radar, like track record, hasn't really lasted in places that long, but has an underrated hockey IQ and is plugged into the different parts of the lineup. So I think if the Jets can bring in a guy like Adam Henrique, you can play him in different parts of your lineup, but you can plug him in nicely to that second C spot, or a player at least similar to him, I think, would be the desired type of mold of player that the Jets should be looking to bring in this year.
For sure. No, I'd agree with that for sure.
So, yeah, let us know in the comments, everybody, what you think the Winnipeg Jets should be doing coming up this trade deadline, which is a few months away at this point. We'll continue to talk about it weekly here on Jet Fuel. For episode number 13, the first guest on tonight's episode, Nick Lynam of Top Line Media, joining me for this Monday, January 15th edition of the show. Nick, go Jets, go tomorrow. Hey, hoping they can get back in the win column, and until next time, you enjoy all the great stuff that hopefully continues to come the Winnipeg Jets way this year.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
Nick Lynam joining me on this edition of the Jet Fuel podcast for episode number 13, brought to you by Make Canada Fasteners and Tools, Terrico, and Goaltenders. And gotta love one of these comments, the only comment on this live stream coming in from Scott Westman, saying, breaking news, Nick calls Stamkos a Jet at the trade deadline. That'd be crazy if the Jets brought in Steven Stamkos. I'd say that would be game over, to be honest with you, if you were able to have Mark Scheifele and Steven Stamkos as your top two centermen. My goodness, that's a joke, of course. Gotta love that. The great stuff in the comments section. But speaking of trade deadline, it's 2023-2024 strategy that we believe should be the play for the Jets at trade deadline. Three options here. The number one being solidify the 2C. Well, two options. We'll get into that last one in just a moment. But solidify the top C, going off of the top options on the TSN trade bait board. That being Lindholm. He's number one on the whole trade bait board. And yeah, for this Winnipeg Jets squad, of course, Nemesnikov, like talked about, he's done the job at second seed this season. But you need more than that, in my opinion, if the Jets are truly going to want to go as far as possible this postseason. Now, could they go on a deep run still with their roster as currently constructed? Sure, that could entirely be possible, but you want to ensure your chances and go all in a trade deadline. Like Nick said, Chevy's had a history of doing that when the Jets are in this type of position, top three in their division. They're number one, and yeah, I think that second line center, it was the biggest need up front for the Jets coming into the season. I guess not the biggest need, but the biggest question. I think now it's become the biggest need. And Elias Lindholm, I know last week I said that it would be game over if the Jets added Lindholm, and I wrote in the blog that it would put the Jets, solidify them as the favorites in the West. And through doing further statistical analysis, I think if Lindholm can go back to the way he was 2 seasons ago, find another gear in a new environment, it would put the Jets as the favorite in the West. But on a Calgary Flames team that has, yes, struggled this season, Elias Lindholm being the 1C there, has the third worst Corsi for percentage on the team. His analytical numbers aren't where they once were. He's 29 years old. Could this be the start of his decline? I'm not sure, but yeah, the amount of value you have to give up for him, I think, I'm not sure if it's worth it. Like Nick had mentioned, I mean, if you were able to get a guy locked up long term and he comes through in the value for the prospect and the draft pick you would give up, and the Jets are prospect rich at this point, they can spare a prospect or two at this trade deadline to try to get better right now, to try to go for it all to win a cup. But would Elias Lindholm be worth it? Taking a double take, don't like to do this, even though I have before. I'm not sure if he would be the guy to go all in on. I think that Adam Henrique would definitely be a guy that the Jets should look to consider, and other guys like Nick mentioned, like Brock Nelson and Giroux could be nice additions to this team, but we'll have to wait and see. I agree, too, with Nick. It would be too much for Sean Monahan to go out and get him for that price, but another option could be trade for a middle six forward. Now, this guy is a top line forward, and he's not ranked number one or high up on the TSN trade bait board, but that's Jake Guentzel. And Jake Guentzel, I'd say, is the top option out there. I don't know how realistic it's going to be for the Jets to bring him in, but this is definitely a guy, if you're going all in, and the Jets are prospect rich in Pittsburgh, could potentially be looking towards getting younger and dealing out pieces throughout the years, even with that big three still there of Crosby, Malkin, and Letang for their durations. Like, that would be crazy. Honestly, I'm not sure if Guentzel gets moved. That would be pretty crazy by the Penguins to trade your best winger. But yeah, that would be the top option right now. I mean, other guys looking at the trade bait board on TSN, like in terms of wingers, one that could be a solid addition for cheap for the Jets would be an Anthony Duclair, who has dealt with injuries throughout years, but San Jose would definitely be a seller. He's only $3 million, and he was a 30-plus goal scorer with Florida just 2 seasons ago. He's a guy that could fill out the middle of the lineup nice. Looking at other guys, Riley Smith having, the experience that he has, just looking at some guys lower down on this TSN trade bait list. Vladimir Tarasenko also on there at $5 million. I'm not sure if he would be worth it bringing him in. So definitely be interesting there. And then in terms of trade for a D, I'm not sure if that would necessarily be the play. Just like we've talked about already with how good this Jets team has been defensively. On paper, I do think there are, some weak spots on this team, but collectively as a system, as a whole, and how these guys have been paired with each other, things have worked out great for the Jets. The top option is a guy in Chris Tanev who has struggled this season as well in Calgary. I'm not sure if he would be a guy that I'd like the Jets to go out and get. I think the defenseman that the Jets should be looking to add, if they were, is a guy that's going to be able to potentially quarterback that second power play better than guys like Schmidt have so far, and a guy like as good as he's been in a bounce back season, and Neil Pionk. That's why I think Villanova coming in is going to be so important to get him playing time coming up, to see if he can be that guy who can add some good more transition to this Jets squad, while also trying him out on that second power play unit to see what that vision and skill set brings there. So going to dive into forward strictly next week. Going to be talking about some defensive options potentially down the line. If the Jets were to add a D, I think that's what they should be looking to do, is add another good puck-moving defenseman. Noah Hannafin is out there, but who knows how much Calgary will want for him. We'll have more reports on that as the weeks and time goes along. Before we bring on the next guest, which I'll announce in just a moment here, just want to bring up who we got as the player of the week, brought to you by Mid-Canada Fasteners and Tools. It's Adam Lowry for me, 4 points in 3 games played, 0 goals, 4 assists in the stretch this week. He had 2 primary assists versus Chicago primarily, and his advanced stats in this stretch have been some of the best on this Jets team, top 3 in Corsi for percentage, and 13th expected goals for ranking on this team at over 50%, 52.22. His season totals this season, pretty good for the third liner, who his line has been considered a second line at times because of him and Niederreiter's play. He's been streaky still, but 8 goals, 14 assists, 22 points, ranking 8th on the team in that category. And what you gotta love from Adam Lowry is his style of play, which is playing hard, getting physical, and giving it everything he has been on full display, and that came full circle on that assist on the game-winning goal against Chicago to Nick Ehlers, giving the Chicago player a bump. being aggressive, going to that pocket, and then feeding Ehlers quickly with that pass. He goes up the left side, burns down, and the rest is history. He snipes it, giving the Jets their record-setting 8th win in a row in franchise history. So that's our player of the week here on G Show Productions. Going to do another one next Monday. And also, congratulations to Rick Bowness and Connor Hellebuck for, of course, making the All-Star game. Rick Bowness, even though he missed games due to the absence of him due to his wife being sick in Judy, he's been able to guide this Winnipeg Jets team, being a huge part of it with the system, to the first place record in the Western Conference right now at 28-10-4, and he's coached this team to the best defensive stats in the league in terms of goals against per game average at first at 2.29, and Connor Hellebuck, I'd say he's in the running for the Vezina again, 21-7-3 this season, 2 shutouts, a .924 save percentage, and a .219 goals against average. And speaking of Connor Hellebuck, I'd say that there's a good chance he could be in action tomorrow, but if he isn't, you're still going to be able to see this Winnipeg Jets team potentially if you've entered Vic Selby's Winnipeg Jets ticket giveaway for tomorrow's game on his new channel, his new project on Instagram, as I should say, called Winnipeg Sports Weekly. Vic Selby coming on the show next to talk about the Winnipeg Jets as well as his new project and that ticket giveaway here on Jet Fuel Podcast. Episode 13, brought to you by McCann Fasteners and Tools, Terrico, and Goaltenders. Vic Selby coming up next. And it's Vic Selby joining me for the first time on the Jet Fuel podcast. And the reason I want to have Vic on is because he started something really cool. It's called Winnipeg Sports Weekly on Instagram, reporting on not just the Jets, but all of the Winnipeg teams when they're playing. Vic, first off, before we get into that, how have things been, man? Last time we spoke here on one of these podcasts was when the Bombers were playing on that podcast. How you been, man?
Oh man, I've been good. Yeah, it's been a pretty good time to be a Winnipeg sports fan recently. It was a little tough last month there and a month before, but right now we're cooking and things are good, man.
Yeah, it's a shame we won't speak about the blue and gold and how they blew it, but yeah, definitely disappointing then, but things have been definitely more exciting recently as Winnipeg sports fans with how the Winnipeg Jets are doing. Just want to know, though, like, what went into the decision for you to start the Winnipeg Sports Weekly page?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like it started as a school assignment. We had to come up with an idea for a website and just kind of come up with like a promotional plan for how to market it. That was what came to my mind, and then after a bit of working on it, it kind of occurred to me like, wow, this really could be something here. And yeah, so far, like the account's only been up like a week, but it's doing pretty well. And yeah, it's just been an absolute blast.
Yeah, 168 followers. It's a new account, like you said, and yeah, posting like Jets game day stuff, quotes from different stuff that's going on in the Winnipeg sports scene, posting a player of the week graphic as well for Gracie Vallis of Westman women's volleyball. So do you think it's obviously like a need, I feel like, that you're filling, not only just reporting about the Jets, but every single team in Winnipeg? Is that something you feel like this province is really missing?
Yeah, like that was definitely the motivation. At least like in my opinion, like I'm a little biased, native Winnipegger, but I really do believe Winnipeg is the best sports city on earth. I just like we have so many teams right now that like once you actually list it all out, it's like insane. Factoring like in the end, like all kinds of things. Like there's just so many teams. And really it's just so difficult to follow all of those, and I figured that if there was one central place where everybody could kind of keep tabs on all the teams that they care about, I think that there's definitely a market for that kind of service, and it can only help these leagues really. I think people are a lot more willing to go see the Westman women's volleyball team if they knew that they were 14-2, and had they you probably wouldn't have known that. right? Like a lot of people wouldn't have known that, but if there was a way that you could keep in touch and see that, hey, maybe more people start going to those games. It just seems like a win-win to me.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. And I love it doing something ambitious, maybe not ambitious, but doing something different and doing something that is kind of similar to what we're trying to do here in Way on G Show Productions, reporting on different leagues and teams in Winnipeg. Of course, doing a Jets podcast, a Bombers podcast when the season goes again. But I had a chance to check out the story on, I think it was for Saturday, or either Saturday or the Thursday game against Chicago, and you were reporting like between intermissions, I think. Is that something you're planning on doing more of going to not just Jets games when you have a chance, but other events and reporting and doing videos like that while at game for people to tune in and follow along on?
Yeah, no, it's definitely something I'd love to do. Yeah, like whenever I'm able to make it out to a Jets game, yeah, it's definitely something I would love to do, like during intermissions and stuff. I have also been planning to go to the Canada West Championship, the basketball championship happening there in February at the U of M. So I definitely want to do that kind of stuff. As far as like more on-site stuff, it's tough. I just don't really have the capacity to do that on the level I'd love to right now. But whenever possible, I definitely would love to do that kind of live coverage, and I definitely want to get more into a video kind of content, like whether that's just like Jets, Bombers, Sea Bears, like post game stuff. Maybe I'm watching all those games anyways. So I might do that kind of stuff, but yeah, as of right now, it's tough to find the time to go to all these games, and money wise too. It's not always easy.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you're a busy guy with school, being in university at the moment, of course. A busy man. I mean, congratulations, by the way, on the engagement late
Thank
last
you.
year. So a
Appreciate
lot
it.
going on for Vic Selby, and this of course starting as a school assignment as talked about, now growing into something that I feel like could become huge. So are you thinking ahead to any future plans in terms of content where you're thinking that this Winnipeg Sports Weekly thing can truly go to?
Yeah, I mean, as of right now, it's basically just the Instagram is me just resharing a lot of news like on the story and posting graphics for things I think are the most relevant. But I definitely want to get my website going, have the domain and website I'm working on right now, not fully done. And I would love to start getting some kind of longer form content there. My dream would be something where we could get local authors, up and coming journalists and things like that involved, and get them to cover the teams, get some exposure, and ideally we can all share a bit of that pot, right? It'd be really nice to make some people some money, and just give people a nice place to go find stuff. I would really like to have like a weekly roundup kind of thing where it's kind of just like, you can read it over coffee on Monday morning, and here's everything that happened kind of in the last like week of Winnipeg sports. So I would love to do that kind of stuff. Definitely have some ambitions with the website, but yeah, that's it right now. I'm just excited to see where things go.
Right, man. And I love that, thinking of other people trying to help them while helping grow your own thing, which I think could grow into something even bigger than it is already. Already growing to over 100 followers. Give them a follow. We'll link them in the description of this episode as well. Winnipeg Sports Weekly on Instagram is the only place they're at right now. But we got to get into the Winnipeg Jets before we let you go here, Vic. This is a team that I've already talked with Nick Lynam in this episode about them losing to Philadelphia on Saturday without Mark Scheifele. Jets fans really acting like it's the end of the world, a lot of them, with this loss, but they're 12-2. I already talked about it, but I mean, the record 8-game win streak, 14-game point streak this team was on, 32 consecutive games without allowing more than 3 goals, which is crazy. And yeah, they're dealing with the injury bug now. Without Shifley, I feel like it's going to be tougher than usual because he's been such a play driver on that offensive side of things. But just your thoughts, Vic, on how this season has gone for the Winnipeg Jets up until this point.
Yeah, I think that obviously, like there's no reason to be anything other than optimistic right now. Being first in the NHL, or I think we're second right now. It's a huge deal, and it's massive. Yeah, I do think Winnipeg fans, man, as much as I love them, they do tend to be pretty reactionary to when things start going poorly. There's a lot of like I don't want to say jump ship because we're all still loyal to our teams, but there's a lot of like Winnipeggers are quick to panic about their sports teams. Definitely don't think there's anything to panic about. I think it's really interesting actually to see how we deal with this loss of Shifley, however long he's out. Doesn't sound like it'll be too long. Because really the only thing that is in any way scaring me about the Jets right now is that I think they could do with a little bit more goal scoring. I would love to see them pick up somebody who could put the puck in the net. I think it'll help a lot with Kyle Connor coming back, but just overall, I'd say that's probably the big thing for the Jets right now. Because honestly, like, I can't find any other negatives with this team right now.
Yeah, and you look at them in goal scoring, like even though it has been more of an issue than their defensive side of the puck this season when putting everything into context, they have 3.31 goals per game, which is tied 10th in the
Yeah.
NHL at this point. This is a team that's also capitalizing at a high level, ninth in shooting percentage this season. I said it earlier in the podcast. I guess I'll touch on it again just a bit, but I think this is where Rick Bonus's system we're truly going to see we've seen the strengths of it before, but we're going to see potentially those strengths coming through again of how well structured this team is played offensively to ease the blow maybe of not having a Mark Scheifele in the lineup. I brought up Boston earlier on, right? They don't have a true 1C on their team, Charlie Coyle being the number one centerman. I feel like in other places, he wouldn't exactly have that opportunity, but with how things have gone down there, right? Bergeron, Krejci going. He's gotten that opportunity in Boston. This team getting Kyle Connor back soon is going to be huge for them. I think I'm 100% with you, Vic. I'd love to see this team go out and add some scoring at the deadline. Although I think the big position they should be going for, as talked about already in this episode, is that second centerman position, especially with Scheifele out now, feeling like Saturday, Nick Lynam spoke about it, and I couldn't agree more with him. The effects were truly there of not having Mark Scheifele, even though it is shortly after him being injured, right, going out on Thursday. But this team, they're in a heck of a position. They're first place in the Central. Yes, they collapsed last season, but I feel like they're more well equipped to handle things this season and more of a buy-in, better chemistry, and just overall feeling on this year's team makes me feel a lot better about the Jets moving forward.
100%. Yeah, no, I think that this is a different team than we saw last year. Or even just in previous years where they started off pretty hot and kind of let things slip. Am I ready to say that this is as good as the 2017-18 team? I don't know if I'm ready to say that yet. But I think that they're in such a great position right now where if they're able to make the right little additions at the deadline and just strengthen that forward group a little bit and just add a little bit more punch, I think that they're as poised as anybody to win the cup. It's definitely an exciting time.
Yeah, and oh man, I'm still not sure if I'm there to call this team like sure cup contenders. Like they are cup contenders obviously, but I don't want to jinx it, don't want to think like Stanley Cup and this team ends up bound out early, but I think yeah, they have the pieces to go on a deep run. They have the type of style, the type of play that they're playing with right now to that will benefit you in a playoff series. I know that they don't rank among the top teams in terms of hits, but this is a team that plays with a hard forecheck, team that plays with a lot of energy, competes, and a team that even though they were down 2-0 to Philly, like Nick Lynam said once again, didn't see any quit from this Winnipeg Jets team. And yeah, I think that when you look at this team 2017-18 compared to this season, the numbers are pretty similar in terms of this team defensively. This team defensively this season is even better. And I had said it earlier on in the show. I think the defensive core was even better in 2017-18. But the way this team is bought into the system, playing as well as they have, team defensively was is just been fantastic to see. And me and Liam Davies talked about it last week, Vic. Also,
Yeah.
we have the goaltending tandem the Jets have had this season, bringing in Rousseau to back up Hellebuck.
Oh man, yeah, and Brossoit's been just a revelation at backup goalie right now. He's been really, really good this year. But yeah, no, like I mean, compared to the previous teams, like this team definitely doesn't have the big names necessarily that 2017-18 did, but I do think with Rick Bonus's system, it's just a better system. I really do think that. And honestly, like, this is just the kind of team that you just feel is good in the playoffs. Like, they have it's a gritty team. They're not afraid to play physical. They're tough defensively, and they take care of the puck. I was there at that Chicago game, and even when it was 2-0, and there's, you get to like 10 minutes left, or sorry, 1-0, and it's like 10 minutes left. I still was just thinking, like, no, we're gonna score here. Like, it just looked like it, like we were controlling the puck, and just the zone time was really something, and it just felt like we were just gonna keep cycling, keep winning puck battles, and it just felt inevitable that they were gonna win that game. And that's something that you just haven't felt in a while, being a Jets fan, like feeling really confident that, oh yeah, we'll work it out, we'll win this game. And yeah, it's definitely been a luxury. This team just feels a little special, eh?
Yeah, there's no quit on this team. It's fantastic to see. And before, in the Paul Maurice days, there was quit in this team in games, to be quite frankly honest with you. Like 2018-19, not sure what happened, but that team fell off a cliff as the season
Yeah.
went along. And then as years went by, players that this team had, they couldn't retain. Guys like Trouba throughout the years, ended up trading him in the Neil Pionk trade. You lose guys like Bufflin, of course, who no one saw coming, and the list of the other guys that ended up leaving. But this Jets team, credit to Kevin Cheveldayoff, doing a lot of the legwork in the off season for this team. And at last year's trade deadline, going on Yadinino Niederreiter and Vladimir Mesnikov, I feel like Chevy is going to be going for this trade deadline coming up. It's going to be interesting to see who this Jets team ends up going for. But you're right, it's special. I think Rick Bonus has spoken about it too. He just did when he was talking about getting named to the All-Star squad, being selected as the coach, saying this is a joy of a group to coach, and they love coming to the rink. They're a really good team on the ice and a really good team off the ice, and that says a lot, because the rumors in Winnipeg, and I feel like they were true with when Blake Wheeler was here and being a cancer in the dressing room. I feel like those rumors, looking at how things have played out, unfortunately for Blake Wheeler and his sake, kind of true.
Yeah, it's really tough, because just publicly, like, everything you ever heard from Blake in a press conference or anything like that, he always seemed to be pure class and always seemed to really love the city and value those things. But you know what, like, you go back through the history and these collapses and like you mentioned, giving up in games, like, that stuff shouldn't just happen. And at the end of the day, it does come down on people like the captain, and it comes down on the coach. Even that 2018-19 collapse that you mentioned, that all happened after that trip to Finland there. And when they went over and played a game in Helsinki, and I remember all the talk about, like, oh, like, it's the trip, it rattled. It's like, they weren't over there building the pyramids. Like, this wasn't a huge, like, intensive thing. It's like, they went to Finland, played a hockey game, came back, had a week off, and then played. Like, if that's enough to destabilize your team, that's a problem. And yeah, it's clear that this Jets team has a culture that I think that we've been missing for a while, and it's clearly showing on the ice.
Yeah, and like, not just pointing it on one guy and it being Blake Wheeler or Paul Maurice, but I think it's just a collection of things throughout the years. And I mean, I could get into so much on what my opinion is on it all. I'll save it for now, but just the culture is so much better for this team. And yeah, I think Adam Lowry was a fantastic choice for captain. Really epitomizes how this Winnipeg Jets team plays, and he's been a streaky player once again this season. Lately, he's been getting on the board. Gonna have a special player graphic shown for Adam Lowry coming up later on. But 4 points in the last 3 games, Vic. Great to see the captain playing. Is he one of the most impressive players from this Jets team's depth so far this season? Talk about who you feel like has been the player you've been the most impressed with this season from the Winnipeg Jets.
Oh man, he's definitely been up there. Like, early in the season, like, he was really producing and getting some numbers going, and that was what was impressive. But what I think has really been since then is, he was always a gritty guy. You throw him in the corners and, he's going to win puck battles. He's never going to stop fighting. I think that's why he won the captaincy in general. But this year, just what he's showing offensively, just in terms of making stuff happen in the offensive end, it's been huge for the Jets. He's definitely one of the guys who's impressed me the most. Another guy, like, honestly, like you could pick anybody from the D-corps, but Nate Schmidt has just blown minds this year, I think. I think Schmidt was kind of a guy who for a while was thought of as just kind of an offense first guy and things like that. I think the defense has always been what people kind of questioned about him. And he's been genuinely one of the most like shut down defensemen in the NHL this year. Like he's been fantastic. And I still think he's shown a lot offensively. The points aren't really there, but Schmidt's just been a stable force for the Jets. And I think it's been massive to their success this year.
Yeah, I think for me, my biggest thing with Schmidt in terms of his big value is how much they love him in that locker room and just the locker room presence he is. It's funny, Vic, because I've been vocal on this show about how if there is a spot I think the Jets could upgrade at this point on the defensive side of the puck, it is Nate Schmidt's spot. As good as like you're right. The numbers look good this season. Analytically, like the numbers are there, but they're getting sheltered. And I think the real standout on that pairing has been Dylan Samberg. I think Dylan Samberg, at how young he is, you know, I don't think size is the end all be all, but when you're able to use the size that you have to the best of your abilities and you're able to be a smooth skater at that size, the way Dylan Samberg has been and transitioning out, I think that, they've been complementing each other well this season, but I think he's definitely carried that pairing. Now, I think a huge thing is with the vibes of this team right now, the young player that Samberg is, and how much he looks up to Nate Schmidt, because from what we've seen, it seems like they really do have a special bond. Do you really want to break that up? And do you really feel a need to break things up on the defensive side of the puck when this team is the best defensive team in the league? And even better, on pace to being even better than a team that looked better defensively on paper in 2017-18.
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing. And just seeing how good that pairing's been, I agree. Sandberg has been phenomenal. I think that, like what a big question mark it is. Like, what if Ville Heinola didn't get hurt in preseason? Because I think we'd both agree there. Like, he had very much earned that spot this year, and I think Heinola would have been in the Jets lineup. I've been extremely vocal for years that Ville Heinola is the real deal. I still think he's going to be an excellent NHL defenseman. And now that he's back, it seems like such a pity for him to be in the AHL, considering what he's been doing down there these last few years. I personally think he's been NHL ready for a while. And I would love to see him playing for the Jets this year. But yeah, like you said, how do you break up this team right now? Like, how do you possibly healthy scratch Nate Schmidt? Or Brendan Dillon or any of these guys, it seems like unfathomable. So poor Ville, I think he's the guy who's really been given the short stick here. It's just unfortunate for him.
Yeah, I think though, from what I've seen and heard, since he is just coming back from injury, they're putting him with the Moose just to ease him back into things. I think that you got to play Ville Heinola still. My buddy Evan Samoilov brought this up. He's been a guest on this show. Hoping to have him on soon, as well as many other great guests in the future. But Ville Heinola could very well still be a trade piece, and if you're gonna trade him or not, I'd rather the Jets hold on to him, but you got to see where he's at this point, right? Once he gets his confidence up again, I'd like to see him in games with the Jets, and you can healthy scratch Nate Schmidt. He'll still be around the team, so that team energy will still be there, kind of like a Phil Kessel last year, right? That veteran staying in the box, in the press box. But I'd love to see Ville Heinola play again. I was really impressed with him in the preseason. But before we get into game picks, Vic, the Jet I've been most impressed with this season, to be honest with you, with him in the lineup when healthy, has been Mark Scheifele, the
Oh
Jets
yeah.
point leader and a guy who gives a crap about the game 200 feet in that line of thinking this way. In terms of him being a complete 200-foot player, I don't think he's the best defensive forward on this Jets team still, but you can see the effort is clearly there, and that's all Jets fans have wanted from Mark Scheifele. And this is a guy that's been one of the best play drivers offensively for this team this season. Now, I'm speaking in terms of throughout the whole course of the season. I think Nikolai Ehlers in these last 2 months from December has been this Jets team's best forward, but Mark Scheifele consistently has been this Jets team offensive driving force. He's been the most consistent offensive player for the most part this season. Of course, he went through a stretch where he wasn't putting up the points, but to see him play 200 feet again has been really awesome to see. And yeah, up until this point in the year, got to give it a 55 in that aspect.
Totally. Yeah, no, Mark's been fantastic. And you know, it's amazing because, you know, like I'm usually the one saying people are overreacting with, oh, trade him, whatever, things like that. Last year, I was one of those guys. I was about ready, just because there seemed like there was so many times where going down the ice, you know, it was the same story. You know, Scheifele comes down the left-hand side, whatever, he gets to around the hash marks, turns back, passes to the defenseman, and stands there. And that just seemed like, oh, like this is like, it was frustrating to watch. This year, he's been so much more assertive. He's really trying to get into attacking positions. I agree with you, like 200-foot game defensively, he's been much better, but offensively, it's just been like, even though the production was there last year too, it's been a breath of fresh air for me just watching the games. It seems like he's really trying to get himself in spots. He's going to the puck. He's winning puck battles. And yeah, he's been fantastic, and he's one of those guys who really has that killer edge offensively, and it's everything the Jets need. He's been fantastic.
I agree, and I think we saw it a bit last season, more so as the season started out. But as the season went along, that group really unraveled. Hoping the same doesn't happen, but I think they're better suited this year to handle the adversity they have. They've already dealt with two long-term injuries. Not the longest term, as Velarde was only out like 6 weeks. Connor going to be back soon, but they've dealt with adversity. Second best team in the NHL right now at this moment, and best team in the West. They got a game coming up tomorrow night against the New York Islanders, Vic, where you guys are giving away some tickets. Before we get into our predictions, fill us in on that, what Winnipeg Sports Weekly is doing there.
Yeah, no, honestly, yeah, I already had a ticket for this game. I was gonna go, and then I got a text from my mom saying she got a couple of really good seats from her boss at work, and she's like, "Do you want to come with me?" Said absolutely. And you know, it's tough. Like when you have one ticket, it's kind of hard to give away to somebody, like to a friend or whatever. You know, you give it to a buddy, he always wants to, you know, bring his girlfriend or something like that, and it's like it's one ticket. So I figured, hey, I just started this thing, may as well give it away, see what happens. And yeah, the response has been insane. I have like 400 comments to pick from. So yeah, that's definitely going to be interesting. But yeah, no, it's just exciting, like to already give back. Like I know it's all these people have been fans for, you know, 5 days. It's nothing substantial, but still, you know, like somebody out there in Winnipeg is going to get to go to a game they wouldn't have gone to otherwise. And yeah, that's a really cool, really special thing to be able to do.
Right, man, right on. Yeah, I love that. We shared it out on our Instagram to the people that saw it. It's great to see doing something like that. Of course, of course. When does the giveaway end?
Yeah, so it's I'm gonna pick the winner tonight at around 9:30, and then message them, and then hopefully announce it tomorrow morning. I just want to give myself enough time in case, like, you know, they don't message back, things like that. You know, I just don't want this ticket to go to waste. So yeah, so it'll be announced tomorrow morning.
Well, right on. Stay tuned for that, everybody. Winnipeg Sports Weekly. If you do follow them, if you did enter the giveaway, be sure to check that out tomorrow morning. Look for that announcement. But for that game tomorrow night, Vic, that fan will be going to, it's the New York Islanders in town, ending the Jets 4-game homestand where they're 2-1 currently on it. They'll be back in action not until Saturday against the Ottawa Senators for a road game in the afternoon. Your thoughts, your predictions for the upcoming two matchups?
Yeah, no, I think For tomorrow, at least, I am expecting the Jets to return to winning ways. The Islanders have kind of had a rough stint the last little bit. They did beat the Maple Leafs a few days ago, but Ilya Sorokin has let in at least 3 goals in each of his last 4 games. I think he's already let in 3 tonight against Minnesota. Coming off a back-to-back, having to come up here. I think things are looking pretty good for the Jets, for tomorrow night anyways. I will be there as well, so I'm excited. But you know what? I think that the Jets looked really tired on Saturday against the Flyers, and I'm hoping this has been enough time to rest before today's game. But even still, after that, they do have a nice long break until they play Ottawa on Saturday. So I'm thinking it'll really be like what they needed to just kind of get refreshed, and yeah, I'm feeling pretty confident that the Jets are going to walk away with wins in both of them.
Yeah, they'll have some more time to, get used to Mark Scheifele not being in the lineup, as he doesn't seem like he'll be out long term. Of course, Nikolai Ehlers has been out for maintenance and practice. Going to be interesting to see when Kyle Connor steps back into the lineup, whether it's on tomorrow night's matchup or for Saturday. But yeah, this is a New York Islanders team that's been touted as a good defensive team for the past few years. Their defensive stats aren't that great this season, and coming in playing on a back-to-back. Not sure if Ilya Sorokin's going to play. Varlamov, if he's in net. Either way, these are goalies, no matter what their stats are, that can come to play and can goalie. And Winnipeg Jets, they know a thing or two about being goalie. Just ask them about that Saturday loss against the Philadelphia Flyers. But yeah, this team seems like they bounced back pretty good this season. They're pretty good against the East. I expect this game to be one where the depth comes through for the Winnipeg Jets, and I think the Jets end off the homestand with a victory. The game on Saturday against Ottawa, I think on paper and looking at how these teams are trending, the Jets should have every single advantage in this one. But afternoon game, not always been the easiest for the Jets. And this Ottawa team, I feel like they could come hungry to play, but I do think the Jets are going to come away with a win on Saturday as well, Vic, and go 2-0 for this week, as they'll be back in action again on Monday against Boston. I think the Jets' structural play will really shine through in a good close win against Ottawa on Saturday.
For sure. Yeah, I definitely hope so. I'm glad they have a nice little break in between games there. I think they've needed that. And yeah, like these next 2 games will be interesting, but next Monday against Boston is going to be the real test. I'm really excited to see how they do for that. That's going to be a must watch.
Guess I'll leave it with one last thing. I think that at this point in the season, with any team the Jets go up against, like they could win any game on any given night with how they've been playing this season. It's just what type of Winnipeg Jets team shows up in these next few games without Mark Scheifele, and Nikolai Ehlers should be good to go. Looked on daily faceoffs. They had him on the lineup, so excited to continue to watch number 27 and the rest of this Jets team. Vic, thanks for coming on and doing this, buddy. We'll connect at some point again soon. Might be doing some great stuff. My company and Vic's at G Show Productions and Winnipeg Sports Weekly. So stay tuned for that. Be sure to enter his giveaway if you haven't already. I guess once this episode comes out, it might be too late. But Vic, enough of me yammering away. You take care, man. You enjoy the game tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks so much, man. Thanks for having me. And yeah, I appreciate all the love, man.
Of course. And Vic Selby joining this edition of the Jet Fuel Podcast, episode 13. Planning to have Vic on more in general here on the G Show Productions YouTube channel, gshow.ca, mainly for Winnipeg Jets content, though, as they don't specifically cover leagues like the MFHL and the MMJHL and Pilot Mountain Hockey Academy and what they're doing. But such a cool thing that Vic's doing over there. Which started as a school project, like he said. I think it could turn into something pretty special. Winnipeg Sports Weekly. Give them a follow on Instagram. And I do believe, folks, that the ticket giveaway is over at this point. But if you want to enter, feel free to try at this point. You go to Winnipeg Sports Weekly on Instagram, and all you got to do is follow them. Tag a friend in the comments. More tags, the more entries you get, and then share the post on your story, and you'll be able to get seats to the Winnipeg Jets game, which looks pretty sweet based off of the pictures that, the one picture he's shown out of the tickets that he has. And yeah, you're basically at center ice. You're higher up than at lower level. But I believe you're still in the 200 section, which is pretty sweet. So yeah, be sure to do that. I think winner gets announced Tuesday morning. Time's running out. So yeah, mosey your way along to the Winnipeg Sports Weekly page. But yeah, it was great to talk to Vic as well as Nick Lynam in tonight's episode. Talking one last thing about Winnipeg Jets trade deadline. In terms of, if they're able to go out and get a top line or a second line center position. By the way, these aren't top options specifically linked to the Jets that I have on this page. These are just the top options I believe on the TSN trade bait board. But yeah, if the Jets were to go out and get a second-line centerman as good as Vlad Namestnikov has been this season, having a very underrated, sneaky season, talked about, very underrated player in the NHL. But yeah, if he was able to go to the third line and play wing with Niederreiter and Adam Lowry, that would upgrade the third line, which has been one of the strong points on the Jets this season, highlighting their depth. And yeah, as much as I talked about Lindholm earlier on in this episode, when talking about trades, about how he's having one of his worst seasons, or having one of the worst seasons out of Calgary players based on the analytics. If the Jets were to go all out for him, he comes into the best defensive system in the league right now. That could spark him, but like I said, and as mentioned, the price for him going to be a lot. Going to be interesting to see what happens. Trade deadline in a few months. Going to be zeroing in on some forwards, talking about some other guys outside of Lindholm and the other guys we've talked about already next week to change things up as our coverage continues on that aspect of things in the world of the NHL. But coming up after this next transition, some final words to end off tonight's episode. Jet Fuel number 13 brought to you by Make Canada Fasteners and Tools, Terrico, and Goaltenders. Stick around, folks. Well, you made it to the end of Jet Fuel episode 13. Really happy about this one, everybody. How the graphics finally turned out. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for tuning into this one if you did. Be sure to check us out on our website, gshow.ca. We got more content than just the Jets when it comes to hockey. We cover the MMJHL, which is the Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League, the Manitoba Female Hockey League, Pilot Mount Hockey Academy, and yeah, anything else we can find in the hockey world, we try to write about it on our website. All our episodes are up on our website, gshow.ca, so check us out there. If you are on our YouTube channel, though, strictly, feel free to subscribe, turn on notifications so you don't miss any future episodes like this. Next episode will be coming out next Monday, time to be determined. Be sure to check back on our website at gshow.ca, as well as check out our social media pages anywhere you might find us in the descriptions in the description of this episode. Thank you to Vic Selby as well as Nick Lynam for joining tonight's edition of the Jet Fuel Podcast. Stay tuned for next week. Gonna have some more great guests on the show. Gonna have some more graphics as well. Gonna be a lot of fun. Once again, shout out to Make Canada Fasteners and Tools, Terrico, and Goaltenders for sponsoring this edition of the Jet Fuel Podcast. And yeah, the Jets, 2 games left in this week. Well, only 2 games to be played in this week, starting tomorrow against the New York Islanders to end off their homestand, and then not playing again until Saturday afternoon against the Ottawa Senators, which will be a much needed break for the Jets considering how much time they've been playing hockey in these last 19 days or so. Everybody, for Graham the G Show Forsyth, that is, at G Show Productions, until next Monday, Jets Nation, Jets fans, I'll see you then. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Stay safe out there. Enjoy the Jets hockey coming your way, everybody. Check out our great content coming your way this week as well. Just want to point that out. Live streams of hockey games should be a lot of fun. But yeah, take care, everybody. Nico Feniak taking us away. Graham the G Show Forsyth giving you the salute, peacing out, and waving so long. Good night, everyone.